Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi yessir wa la tu'assir, Rabbi tammim bil khair. Oh my Lord, make it easy and don't make it difficult. Oh my Lord, complete it with goodness. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and welcome to the Practical Qur'an Learning System. This is lesson 13. In this lesson, I'm gonna teach you how to properly pronounce the letter Ra. The letter Ra is normally a thin letter. When you read the Qur'an, the letter Ra is sometimes pronounced thick and sometimes thin. So how do you understand if it's thick or thin? You will learn it by our practical system, inshallah. When do you pronounce the letter Ra thick? If a fatha or dhamma comes above the letter Ra, it reads thick. For example, bi Rabbi, you see the letter Ra has fatha. So that's why I don't say bi Rabbi. I say bi Rabbi. Why? Because the letter Ra has fatha. Bi Rabbi. The next example, kafiru. You see the letter Ra has dhamma. That's why I read it thicker. Kafiru. You got it? The dhamma has come above the letter Ra. I say kafiru. I read it thick. Moreover, in the Qur'an, you see the letter Ra with a jazm. In that case, how do you read it? It's very easy. If the letter before the Ra has a fatha or a dhamma, you read the Ra thick. Ra with jazm. If the letter before the Ra has a fatha or dhamma, you read the Ra thick. Very easy. If it has a kasra, you read the Ra thin. For example, here the Ra has a jazm and the previous letter has a fatha. That's why here we read the Ra thick. One har. You see? One har. I read it thick. The next example, takathur. You see? The letter Ra has jazm and the previous letter has dhamma. So that's why I read it thick. For example, takathur. We read it as takathur thick. Now, the next part is very important and needs a little bit more attention. What happens when the letter Ra has a jazm and the letter before Ra also has a jazm? How do we read the Ra now? Thick or thin? Well, it's very easy. This time, we have to look at the letter that comes before the previous letter. If that letter has a fatha or a dhamma, you read the Ra thick. And if that letter has a kasra, you read the Ra thin. For example, wal asr. So where is the jazm here? In our previous lessons, we learned that if there is a stop sign, you read the last letter with a jazm. So there is actually a jazm on the Ra. Now we have to check the letter before it, and we see that the previous letter also has a jazm. So now we have to take the third step and check the haraka of the letter before the previous letter. And when we do, we see that this letter has a fatha. Because of this, we have to pronounce the Ra thick. Wal asr. You see? Wal asr. You see? I read it thick. The next example is khusrin. Again, there is a stop here. So, you make the haraka of the Ra a jazm. Normally, you read it khusrin. But because there is a stop, we read it khusr. To figure out if we are going to pronounce the Ra thick or thin, we then look at the letter just before it and see that it also has a jazm. Finally, we check the letter before it and see that it has a dhamma. That's why we read the Ra thick again. Khusr. So far, we have seen examples where the Ra is pronounced thick. When do we pronounce it thin? If the letter Ra itself has a kasra, you pronounce it thin. For example, bil birri. You see, I read it thin. Bil birri. I didn't say bil birr. I said bil birri. Thin. When the letter Ra comes with a jazm and the letter before it has a kasra, we read the Ra thin. For example, wastaghfirhu. You see, the letter Ra has jazm. And I check the letter before it and see that it has a kasra. That's why I read the Ra thin. Wastaghfir. Finally, if the letter Ra has a jazm and the letter before it has also a jazm. We check the haraka of the letter that comes even before that. And if that letter has a kasra, we read the ra thin. Let's check our last example. We see dhikrun, but because there is a stop at the end of the word, we make the last haraka a jazm. And when we check the letter before it, we see that it also has a jazm. So finally, we check the letter even before that letter, and because it has a kasra, we read the ra thin. Dhikr. Okay? Dhikr. Well done. Just by understanding properly, pronounce the letter ra, you have now completed lesson 13. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.